Okay, hi, that's Gianpaolo Russo speaking for a new edition of PPC World News. Here we have today Amy Bishop, the one of the speakers of the ADworld Experience, next ADworld Experience event. Hi, Amy. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Everything okay. Let's go to the news I selected this week. The first one is about Pinterest. Pinterest stats. It's a recap of what to do and don't do to get started with Pinterest stats. I'm not really expert in Pinterest stats. I've never really done it. What about you, Amy? Have
I
you?
wouldn't call myself an expert at Pinterest. Just a little bit of experience, but that's one of the things that I think is really appealing about Pinterest is that everybody's talking about Facebook, everybody's talking about Instagram, everybody's talking about LinkedIn. You don't hear as much about Pinterest, but there's a huge opportunity there.
Yeah, I agree. I agree too. It's a little less used here in Europe because it's a little less widespread, but I think it's something to look at definitely in the next future. And it's this post is nice because it's a sort of a small recap of things you absolutely have to look at and
Yeah,
error to avoid.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that she did a really good job of defining some of the really good points about doing your due diligence before you just jump into Pinterest. So making sure that when you set up your page that you already have content on your profile before you start advertising so that there are other things for Pinterest users to navigate around. And then also, and this is so important, you'll probably hear me say it multiple times throughout this, that it's really important to know your audience. And she does make a really good point about making sure that you understand your audience and what they're looking for. And the great thing about Pinterest, like other social platforms, is that you can access their audience insights without even doing advertising. So if you set up your business profile and start collecting some of those audience insights, and you can look at that and see a little bit more detail about who your audience is, the things that they're interested in, and that's going to help you to be more successful in your advertising once you're ready to launch.
Perfect. Okay, let's move to the next news. This is a CRO piece of news. It's nothing really new in this article, but I think it's interesting because they gave some examples, simple examples of what you should look at. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I thought it was a good article. It made a lot of good points. I would agree with you. There wasn't necessarily anything new or shocking in the article, but I think the premise of the article is very solid, and that's that design flaws, even simple ones, can cost you a lot of conversions, which can in turn cost you a lot of money. So I would add to this article that it's really important to know your personas and what they care about to make sure that as you're designing those landing pages, that it will really resonate with them. And that can come in the means of the images that you use, the functionality, all the way down to the messaging, and also understanding what devices that they'll probably be using and making sure that it's optimized for that. And then it's also important to know where they're at in their journey. So part of this goes to ad delivery as well, but if they're really high funnel in their journey and they may not be ready to get a quote yet or make a purchase yet, offering them information in exchange for either their engagement or better yet their email address helps you to make sure that you can reconnect with them later, either through email marketing or through remarketing of the certain actions that they took on your site. So knowing where they're at in that journey is going to be really important to making sure that you're making that page as valuable as possible as well.
Yeah, and I love this sum up of colors
Yeah,
for
and
men and women.
hopefully
Yeah,
hopefully that's something that people are thinking about when they're doing their branding as well. There's so much around colors and what colors represent and what they incite people to do as far as action. So hopefully as you're thinking about branding, you're thinking about those colors so that when you in turn create brand assets, it's all still really relevant. Because I know, depending on how big the organization is, if your brand colors are blue and purple, but you want to make an orange landing page, you might get your hand slapped a little bit. So you have to be a little bit careful with how we use colors, but there's definitely something to that and making sure that you're driving the right actions with the colors that you're using as well.
Exactly. Okay, let's go to the next news. Broad match. Broad match is like a bad word for PPC professionals, but sometimes they are useful. Yeah, where she's Bethany Bay, she's talking about some interesting useful cases of broad match, especially in finding new keywords, of course, and afterwards searching for some more long tail related keywords. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I thought that this was a great article. So I really agree with Bethany's points. And when she first opens the article, she mentions that she's not really in love with broad batch, and I am the same way. Unless it's modified broad, I don't usually use a ton of broad, but it definitely has a place. So typically, that's either to further your reach with an existing audience or to prospect into additional audiences. So her point about using RLSA is great because you can then reach further into an audience that's already somewhat pre-qualified because you know if they've already been to your site, then they're somewhat relevant. And then regular broad match is great for finding new keywords, as you mentioned, and as she wrote in her post, especially if you're looking to expand your prospecting. She also makes the point to put that into a different campaign, and I totally agree with that. That way you can cap the budget, and you can make sure that there's not as much risk of it absorbing budget from other keywords or having to cap keywords, having to cap budgets of campaigns with keywords that were previously working. And then I would just add to that, you'll just want to go really crazy with the negatives. I would go in any of the relevant campaigns that you already have, any negative keywords that you have in those campaigns, add those proactively to that new broad match campaign to make sure you're not starting from scratch and weeding out that bad traffic. And then also adding your regular keywords as negatives in that campaign too, to make sure you're not cannibalizing traffic from those keywords. So there's some extra steps that you have to take to make broad match work, but there can be a place for it.
Yeah, perfect. Next article, conversion sciences. It's a recap of what you can do with ad extensions. So I think ad extensions are the best thing invented. Google invented after the search engine. No, it's too much, but they are very useful. And to my surprise, I know I've seen a lot of advertisers who are not using them. The majority of non-professional advertisers are not using them. So it's a huge advantage to use all the available ones. What do you think about it?
Absolutely, it's a huge advantage, and it's well known that this is something that Google factors in when they're thinking about quality score and ad rank. So ad extensions are just a huge opportunity that shouldn't be missed. I thought the post did a good job of outlining the different types of extensions and how to use them. Depending on your goals, ad extensions can be a great way to capture those conversions without anybody even having to click through to your website. So things like store locates, messages, phone calls, those are things that your prospects can do from the ad. So it's kind of crazy to miss out on those if those are goals that are pertinent to your business. But they also help to guide users down paths. So if you're bidding on sort of like higher funnel keywords, like for instance, if someone searched for, new red shoes or find new shoes or online shoes or things like that you were bidding on, you don't necessarily know what kind of shoes that they're looking for, but if it's a relevant search term to your business that you want to bid on, you might have a fairly generic final URL that took them to a page with all of the different categories of shoes. But then in your site links, you could be more specific and say athletic shoes or sandals or boots, and you could schedule those to make sure that you're not showing sandals in Minnesota in December. So they can be a great addition to your ad to help guide users down the right path to get them to what they're looking for even quicker if you're not exactly sure yet what it is that they're looking for. And then on the broadest level, I found that a lot of times site links don't actually capture the click, but they drive up the click-through rate. So although the ad unit in general has a higher click-through rate, I typically find that less than 5% of those clicks are actually happening on the site links. They're still happening on the main ad. It's just that the ad is so much bigger with all of those site links. It has so much more real estate that it's just more engaging. So that increase in click-through rate can help your quality score, which then impacts your cost per click and your ad rank. So ultimately, you have the opportunity to get more conversions at potentially a more efficient cost. So they're definitely really valuable, and it's always crazy to me too when I log into accounts and I see that they haven't used them before, and it's one of the first things that I check for to add into new accounts.
Yeah, exactly the same thing I do. Okay, another news by TQ Digital. This is about the fact that Facebook is not so detailed. Facebook is going to switch Google style campaign budget, budget. So you're not. We are going to lose the possibility to set a group level budget. What do you think about it?
So I can see both sides of this.
Yeah, next September. Next September will be rolled out globally.
Yeah, so we have a few months to prepare for it. I can see both sides of this because I've used both ad set and campaign budgets. And like you said, it is what we're dealing with in Google and Bing. It's what we've been doing in search for years. So we should be used to it to some extent. I think the main difference is there are so many different changes in targeting that can happen at the ad set level that it makes ad sets almost like their own campaigns in ways. But at the same time, Facebook has proven time and time again that they're really good at understanding which of their audience are most likely to purchase, and they do a really good job with their
and spending all the budget, of course.
Yes, and extending the budget. They do a really good job with their optimizations to their bidding algorithms, and so I assume that this would probably be similar. One thing that I would say that I kind of struggle with a little bit is that when budgets are really tightly capped, one thing that Facebook has struggled with, in my opinion, in the past, is with testing. So if you're testing two ad sets against each other, they tend to make some premature decisions, and the same goes with ad testing as well. So I have some concerns that at the campaign level, if there's not a ton of budget, they might make decisions too quickly on which ad sets are performing best without really giving enough credence to really making sure that they're determining which of those is more valuable. And it might just be that some ad sets just might not get much delivery at all. So in that case, we may then have to just adjust by creating more campaigns and breaking those ad sets out into their own campaigns. But ultimately, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. Anytime we lose a little bit of control, it's always a bummer. But I think Facebook typically shows that they know what they're doing. And so hopefully this will be an okay thing for advertisers.
Yeah, I think so. Even if I'm not really expert in Facebook. Okay, another piece of news. What do you think about the Manufacturers Center? There are some news about it, and it seems they are going to push on them.
Yeah, good question. So when Google made their 2019 announcements, one of the things that they emphasized was that they were going to really focus on shopping, among other things. And so I think this is probably one of the first steps. I was hoping that that might mean a little bit more control for advertisers with their original announcement. With the changes to the Manufacturer Center, I don't think that this will necessarily impact the broad majority of advertisers and what they can control, although it will affect them in terms of working with content that the manufacturer has created. That said, the ability to report on search terms at the product level is interesting, but I know a lot of people, including myself, set up their ads and set up their ad groups to be single product ad groups or SPAGs. So even though the search terms are reported at the ad being able to see the search terms for each product because they have a different ad group for each of those products. So I don't know that that's going to have as big of an impact as they might have expected. The additional content options sounded pretty interesting, but given that they have to work with a third party, I have to wonder how many manufacturers will actually take advantage of that and take the time to do that. And it'll be interesting to see how and when they do that, what impact that it has on the ads and the click-through rate. It was reported that based upon the test that they had from their early results, that it was fairly positive, but it'll be interesting to see long-term and as they get more people adopted into that, what that really looks like.
Yeah, okay. We didn't see it at all because it's not available yet in Italy. But Brad Geddes didn't have a very good opinion of that. And me too, I think it's a sort of duplication of shopping center of the main merchant center.
Yeah, it's like the merchant center, but it's just for manufacturers. And basically it gives them a little bit more control over the content that shows for their products. So it'll be interesting, I guess, to see as this adoption increases, it'll be interesting to see they're able now to insert some of their own content. And so it'll be interesting to see what impact that has on the actual advertisers, because the majority of advertisers won't have access to the manufacturer center. They'll only still have access to the merchant center unless they're working directly with the manufacturer.
Okay. Let's move to the last news. It's one of the many lists of scripts you can find of online. It was I picked it up only or to ask you if you are using scripts and which one are your preferred ones. If you are using.
I love scripts. So this is a super handy list that Abby put together. Some of my favorite scripts are things like the account anomaly detector. And it lets you know if something has changed in the account that you should be aware of, any big shifts, and you can determine what things that you want it to alert you about. So like if there's a conversion drop or there's a drop in spend or an increase in spend, things like that, you can set that up and it will alert you. I also like scripts for monitoring ad tests. There's one that it will label winners and losers, so it kind of simplifies and speeds up ad testing. And then there's also a script that automatically applies specified negative lists to new campaigns. And it only does it if you specify that you want these certain negative lists to be applied to all campaigns. If there's one that you wanted just for your brand campaign or something like that, it wouldn't apply it to all of the rest of your campaigns. So you can specify which negative list that you want it to run on. These are just three of the scripts that I didn't see in this list, but there are also ones that are in this list that I haven't used before. So I'm pretty excited to dig into this and see if there are some additional ones that I can apply beyond the ones that I'm already using.
Yeah, maybe you can comment on the article and edit that. Okay, thank you, Amy. We will see you in Bologna in April.
Yeah.
Have you bought your tickets? Your plane tickets?
Not yet.
You should. They could be quite expensive. Okay, so see you and thank you for being with us and have a nice day. Ciao.
Thank you. You too.